Yeah, I think first of all, it's been quite a fruitful and successful season holistically from a domestic cricket point of view. And when you start within the women's space, I mean, we welcomed our partners, Hollywood Bets, that added a nice, colorful flavor to the domestic competition with the Pro 50 and the Pro 20 series. And when you look at how women's cricket has grown and in how it's been followed as well, from a social media perspective, as well as our games that are more or less shown on the internet space, you can see that we're on the right path, and this was complemented by performances on the field of play. And I think what is going to be very vital is that we will be welcoming a new team, which is the Northwest Dragons, coming into the women's space for next year, which will probably be like a new addition. We're quite excited about it because looking at their successful 2-year stint in the Division 2 Women's League, you can see that they boost a nice youth talent, especially some of their players represented us at the recent Under-19 World Cup. And I think by being promoted into our top league, it just boils down well to the structures that Northwest are running out there. But I think it will be false of me not to compliment the work that has been done behind the scenes, especially since we've migrated into the new space of professionalizing women's cricket. When you look at the likes of the Lions, the Titans, as well as the Hollywood Dolphins, for example, the commercial value that their partners are bringing in giving the women's space some crucial appetite to make sure that we can continue to breed new talent, but most importantly make the space of women's cricket to be lucrative as well in the space. And I think we will be false if you find that when we reflect this last year of professional cricket and we think we haven't achieved much, but you can see that there's a lot of value add, and we see it with some of the players that are now being selected to get into the Proteas team that have gone now to Sri Lanka. And when you look at the squad that's also coming to the National Academy, it just boils down well for women's cricket. So overall, we're quite satisfied with the women's space. On the men's front, I think when you look at Division 2 itself, we welcome the Tuskers from KZN being promoted into the Division 1. I think when you look at the overall performance in the various formats, it just bears testimony there. And I think they were closely contested in that league with the Northern Cape Heats, which have also been quite a strong phenomenal. But the team that impressed us the most in Division 2 is the improvement of results that were attained by Mpumalanga, which was quite encouraging with a young coach. And looking at some of the individual performances there, it just boils down well, and the strength that the league is starting to take shape, which we welcome. I think what is our bread and butter is definitely our Division 1. We started with the T20 competition there. I think when you look at that competition itself, you see the arrival of new exciting young talent coming through from our SA Under-19 and as well as our talent acceleration programs, acclimatizing to the professional space and hitting the ground running and performing. But what is also most welcome is some of the teams have stabilized. They have a nice mixture of talented players that gives us the much needed edge, especially in this instance when you look at the Lions, for example, their squad metrics, for example, there's a lot of players between the age of 24 and 28 which are more or less solidifying, and the results that they are attaining and consistency in the various three formats, it just bears testimony to the balance of the squad that they have. Because I think when you look at the overall competition, they're more or less a team that were fighting in different spheres, and they were doing very well, but towards the ODD competition. But I think what also quite exciting for us is when you look at the Lions setup, is the experienced coaching staff that they have. I mean, when you have the likes of Russell Domingo, who's previously the national coach, taking over the helm of the organization, but most importantly, bring on board people like Hashim Amla, who's a former test player, a guy like Alan Donald, who's a former opening bowler. You can see that the people around the Lions environment are surrounded by a well-experienced individual. That's why it adds value with the type of squad that they have. And I think with the work that the guy like Jimmy Kamadi does as an assistant coach in the mix, it just bears testimony to say the results that we see from a team like that and the consistency is just the overall package that it brings. I think from an ODD perspective, we just saw a bit of a turnaround for us. And if you look at how the Dolphins started the season slightly in a shaky ground, and purely because of the injuries that they've experienced in the course of the season. Because from a Cricket South Africa perspective, this was an unusual season for us because we had too many bowlers that were injured during the course of the season, which were not available for most of the teams, which affected us in a great deal. But the medical team is dealing with that to try and make sure that we can prevent this from happening down the line. But when you look at how the Dolphins have fared this year, I think they went into a position where they got qualified into the finals of the ODD, and they played against the Boland team. And when you look at the overall, I think that was a turnaround for their season because it was very important for them to be able to perform accordingly and boost the processes. I mean, when you look at the type of talent that coming from KZN, it would have been false for them not to have a professional team down the line. But I think it's when you look at the leadership that exists within the space, it just bears testimony to the type of quality of cricket that is being run overall. And I think the way they ended up being the winners. But what is quite a privilege as well was the consistent performance of a Poland team that ended up in the final. They might not have a silverware, but for the first time this season we saw them competing at different formats, where previously they would have been stronger in one format. I think that bears testimony to the work that Justin Ontong has done as well in stabilizing the environment there. But I think what is very important is just to have all these former players coming into our space and coaching some of the professional teams. That adds value in terms of what we're trying to achieve overall. And I think the season ended up in a 4-day competition which was shared between the Hollywood Dolphins as well as the Multiply Titans. And when you look at the exuberance of youth, I mean, no one can take away the innings of a Pretoria that he had in the second innings there to rescue the game and make it a draw. But overall, when you look at the Titans in terms of how they fared in the whole competition, the performance of a guy like Rivaldo Monsami, Pretoria's in the mix, I think it just boils down that our batting is starting to take shape overall, collectively in the environment. But it also gives us a sense that the things are starting to stabilize, because these are some of the players that were identified at quite a young age and been given opportunities, and to see them performing consistently well, it just boils down well for us in the process. And I think we very proud in terms of how the season came to an end, especially with such an exciting draw, because for most of that game the Titans were on the back foot. The Lions could have walked away with it, but we're quite happy with the outcome thereof. I think in summarizing the season, we have to look at it at different aspects. From a player pool perspective, very excited with the young players coming through, and especially those that were given an opportunities like the Matthew Breskis that donned the jersey at Protea level and have done very well. That to me boils testimony to say the systems are working. And I must commend all the teams that are actually playing in Division 1, because when you look at it from a performance perspective, they use almost 90% of their contracted players, which is very good for a success rate for us, because in the past you probably will find that the rate would have been slightly lower, where you find that they go and get players that are either on high performance contract or non-contracted players that would have played normally in the space. But which is quite also encouraging is that most of our season is taking place without the involvement of our national team players. When you look at the national team, they have a heavy schedule, and it's not going to go lesser or anything. So it's very important for the players that are playing domestic cricket to take a leading role in making sure that we can progress the space. I mean, when you look at the majority of our national players only play domestically T20 competition. They hardly play 1 day or 4-day cricket, which means then the players that are playing domestic cricket needs to step up. And as a reference point, you sometimes need your national players to benchmark the progress of your domestic setup against that. But be as it may, is the nature of where we're finding ourselves, and there is places to play for. And I think the addition of the SA20 competition and how it's shaping up, it just gives that much needed boost to domestic cricket overall. And from us, we are reviewing various aspects. we are starting a domestic desk. And the domestic desk will be an avenue where we bring the various expertise to be forward-looking in terms of how we can re-energize domestic cricket to be a conducive process that will deliver Protea players, but also that people back home will also be excited with. Because when you look at the exciting cricket that we played, everybody is well aware that the attendance, for example, for those matches is also questionable. We're having a lot of games being followed on our platforms in terms of YouTube and all that, but we still need people to come and support these players at the various stadiums. And that's one of the key fundamental issues that we're going to go back into the drawing board within the domestic desk and work with the various departments that can assist us, especially even our members, to find avenues of saying, now, how can we better support the talent out there with a better crowd that could come and support them on their venture. But most importantly as well, we're trying to hit the reset on some of the administrative documents just to make sure that they could be conducive to the modern way of operating. The one that excites me the most is to reset our loan agreement system, because there's a lot of players that are contracted but they're not ending up on the field of play, and they fall behind from a player development perspective. And it's very important for us to make sure that we loosen up a bit as far as the loan agreement is concerned, so that the best players end up being on the field of play. So one of those issues is just to make sure that our document that we're going to be coming up with for the new season is conducive to getting more players that have been identified to be on the field of play, and so that we sweat our assets from a contracting perspective. On the coaching front, we are seeing some movement. Some teams are appointing new coaches, and we have an elite coach development program. So we'll continue supporting the individual coaches from a personal development plan perspective, because for us to have the right players that are producing the results for us to be able to be selected for the Proteas, we need a backroom staff that is more or less agile and can be able to support these players. And so looking after these coaches is also paramount importance. We're heading to a period where we're going to be looking at the performance reviews of each and every coach, and from there we will derive personal development plans and see what needs to be done for each and every coach that has been identified, but predominantly just to make sure that we can close any performance gaps that might hinder their service to the players. I think overall we're quite satisfied, and I just need to take this opportunity to thank each and every player that donned the jersey for their respective provinces, the CEOs out there, as well as the coaching staff, but most importantly as well our partners, which is the South African Cricketers Association. I think this season wouldn't have been successful if all those parties never came and produced their responsibilities in that regard. But also, it will be forced of me not to thank the CSA board, the members council, as well as the staff at CSA from the various departments that they've contributed to this successful season.